we take on the responsibilities for things like education and leading tours. And as you look around the room, can you see that big speaker? And there's another one left and right. We are, in the next month, we're going to be surrounded by speakers, and there will be a camera over that entry door so that we can link up with Zoom and record all these lectures. We're doing it now, but the old-fashioned way. He has to do all the work. On top of that, look to your left. This is in the process of being installed. I don't know how many of you have been in here before for a number of years. Okay, you might remember a cabinet that was over here, and you push a button and you could see water gurgling through the system. It was an interpretation of the Arcata Marsh as a wastewater treatment plant. Well, that died. It died a long time ago. And so the interpretation class at Humboldt State University, I did it again, it's now Cal Poly Humboldt. The interpretation class under Jen Carlton designed and helped put together this new display. So the idea is you start on the left there, and it's going to walk you through all the parts of what the Arcata Marsh was designed to do, which I'm sure that folks all know that. So I'm really excited because I was part of helping to persuade the city to do all of it. Thank you. And by the way, you know it's spring because red flowering currant is blooming out front in our new native plant garden. Okay. Before I forget, one of your fans sent this along.
Oh, great.
All right, so we have once a month lectures. Next month, a young woman, Rachel Aguirre, is going to be talking about salmon restoration, which everyone loves to hear about. And I'm looking forward to hearing what happened after the Klamath dams were removed. I understand the salmon found their way upstream pretty significantly. For tonight, how could you not want to come and listen to a talk on butterflies? So it's my pleasure to introduce Clint Pogue, California Fish and Wildlife. And
Nope. I'm the president of the North American Butterfly Association.
Oh, I did get it wrong, damn it. Welcome anyway.
Thank you.
Welcome, Clint.
Thanks, Elliot, and thanks all y'all for coming out tonight. Thanks to the Friends of Arcata Marsh for hosting this series time and again, providing this place for community to come together to talk about our natural resources. We live in such an amazing community that really cares, yes, about our natural resources, our plants, our critters, our clean water, our clean air. We're really blessed. And so it's amazing to be in a place surrounded by like-minded people, because when we come together like this in community, there's so much palpable dedication and enthusiasm and curiosity. And in that, there's magic. So there's magic in the room tonight, and it's Elfin Magic. We're going to start with an overview of what's a butterfly, then talk about status of butterflies, look at what it's like to study rare ones, look at this community-centered conservation idea, talk about a community partnership, discuss some community actions, things that we can do. I'll give you some resources, and then we're going to put it all together with the recipe on how to make more butterflies at the end. So first up, is it a butterfly or a moth? This is the question I get more than anything working with butterflies. And the truth of the matter is it's a very unsatisfying answer. Butterflies are moths. So they are the order Lepidoptera in the class Insecta. Butterflies and moths make up this group. You could imagine a strand of rope or a strand of cable, and it's made up of like 48 different strands. Each of those strands represents a superfamily. So butterflies are in the superfamily Papilionoidea, also historically called Rhopalocera, which is Latin for clubhorn, because butterflies have a clubbed antennae. The end of their antenna is swollen, and that's about the best rule of thumb I'll give you for telling butterflies from moths. But like I said, butterflies are one of those strands. Those other 48 strands are the moths. And they're as different from each other as they are to butterflies. So whenever they say, what's the difference between a butterfly or a moth? It's like, what's the difference between like a quiche and a pie? Like, a quiche is just a very unique kind of pie. Butterflies are just a unique kind of moth. So there's 7 families of butterflies. There's the Papilionoideae, and that's the swallowtails and parnassians. Nymphalidae, that's a big group. It's got the icons. It's got the monarch and the California sister and the painted lady. Lycaenidae, these are the gossamer wings, and those are blues, elfins, hair streaks, and coppers. We're talking about elfins tonight, so this is the family that we're going to be definitely talking about the most. Pieridae, these are whites and sulfurs or orange tips, dog faces. And then Rheodinidae, these are the metal marks. We don't have any of those in our county, at least not that we know of. They're right across the border in Trinity County with the Mormon metal marks, so maybe we'll be able to add that one to the list. Hesperidae, they've got my heart. This is the skippers. If you ever see the little ones, they're like, what's that little like day flying moth? That's probably a skipper, and you can tell them because they have hooked antennae. And then the Hetalidae, these are one of the most ancient groups of butterflies. They're called the moth butterflies, and they're South American. We don't have them here. In fact, they look quite moth-like, but if you look at their chrysalis, you can really see that that's a butterfly chrysalis type. There's about 17,500 to 20,000 species of butterflies and 180,000 Lepidoptera species. So like for every one butterfly, there's 9 kinds of moths. But what I like about this number is that, out there in the animal kingdom, there's about 1.8 to 2.2 million total species. So on good approximation, 1 in 10 species is a lepidopteran in the animal kingdom. And I find that to be quite astonishing, quite surprising. And the thing is, butterflies are surprising me all the time. So here's a few things that I think a lot of people find surprising about butterflies. First up, most butterflies aren't migratory. Everybody knows the icon. Who's the icon? Monarch. They're amazing. They have this multi-generational life cycle where the great grandkids are the ones that actually come back to the original roosting place. Many generations in between. How do they know how to make it back there? We're still figuring that out. They eat a toxic plant called milkweed and incorporate that into their body, so anything that eats them is going to have a heart attack. Amazing species, super icon, but actually quite a poor representative of butterflies. Most butterflies aren't migratory. Most butterflies spend their whole life, egg, caterpillar, pupa, adult, that you could see from standing in one spot. And that results in them, most of the butterflies that are around here, they're our neighbors all year long. Some butterflies in the group Lycaenidae, the gossamer wings, so that's the blues, coppers, hair streaks, and like we're talking about tonight, elfins, have these cool ant symbioses. So that's what we see in this picture on the left. The caterpillars of the gossamer wings sometimes will excrete a sweet liquid out of their hind end called honeydew, and the ants just go crazy for it. So they'll go up and grab the caterpillar and then bring it down into the colony. They'll come bring the caterpillar food so that it can continue to eat, to continue to make that honeydew. And so they're just like farming these caterpillars, and the caterpillar is protected like a whole freaking army. So it's definitely beneficial for the caterpillar. It gets protected by all these big-jawed ants. You ever got the ants all on you or had an ant bite? It's quite gnarly. And so these ants, they're a whole army of protection for the butterfly down in the ant colony underground.
Is that like the laps that we have around here too?
Not all ants do this, and not all butterflies do this, but this is a well-known documented example of a symbiosis between these two groups in large. And the ones that, smell weird, that are in everybody's plants right now, I don't think they do this. But the thatch ants that you might see out in the dunes, you ever see those big mounds and there's ants all over it? Nice. Well, it's likely that if there's blue butterflies around, that they probably do this at least somewhere in their range. Whether or not they're doing it at the ones here or at the dunes, we don't know yet. But we need to find out. So these caterpillars, they get a nice protection. They get fed, they get protected. But in Poland, there's the large blue, and it's not so magnanimous. After it gets fed and fed and fed, at the end, it turns on the ants and it eats the ants as its final meal before it pupates and emerges out of the ant colony. I know. So there's not a lot of examples of butterflies being carnivorous, but it's always the case in the larva form. In North America, we have a carnivorous butterfly called the harvester, and its caterpillars eat aphids only. So most butterflies, they only eat one or maybe a couple kinds of plants. They're really tied to the plants that their caterpillars eat. The harvester, it only eats a particular kind of aphid, and you see that in the upper Midwest. But this one's my favorite. So in the life cycle of a butterfly, it goes from egg to caterpillar to pupa to adult. And in that caterpillar stage, there's sort of substages that we call instars. So what some scientists did was they took some late instar caterpillars and they had two groups. One of them they exposed to the smell of acetone. What's acetone? Nail polish remover, really unique kind of smell. Like you smell it, you know exactly what you're smelling. So one group just is exposed to that, it comes and goes. The other group, they get exposed to the acetone smell. I know it's kind of mean, but they would shock them a little bit whenever they let them smell that acetone. Yeah. So they're adversely conditioning them to the smell of acetone. So these are caterpillars, late stage caterpillars. So they're allowed to eat and eat and eat until they pupate and then eclose as adults. So they take them as adults and they give them a choice. They sort of put them in the middle of two areas and two spaces, one with acetone, one acetone free. So the butterflies that didn't get shocked, they spent about equal time in each room. They were like, I don't know why there's two rooms here. I like the space. The ones that were shocked were like, I ain't going in the acetone room. They were like never going in there. So somehow, through the process of metamorphosis, they were able to maintain memory. And what I find to be super remarkable about this is that whenever they go from caterpillar to pupa, it's not like they crawl in the pupa. They become the pupa. Inside that exoskeleton, they're completely liquefied, except for these regions of cells called imaginal discs. And it's those little regions of cells that you can imagine as the butterfly seeds. That's where the butterfly starts to form. So those eyes, the antenna, the head, the thorax, the abdomen, and of course those wings, all that information on how to build it is in those imaginal discs. And somehow in those discs too are encoded the memories of the caterpillar form. So I find that to be extremely amazing. Let's talk about how butterflies are doing. Are all butterflies in decline? A landmark study came out last year, March 2025. This paper will be cited forever in the butterfly conservation literature. In North America, since 2000 to 2020, there was a 22% decrease in overall butterfly abundance. So since the turn of the millennium, and tacking on 6 more years, you can imagine that's more. We've lost probably a quarter of our butterflies over that time. And that's not just in America. This is happening in Singapore. Since the mid-1850s, they've had almost half of all their species become extirpated, no longer found in Singapore. In Europe, the grassland butterfly indicator, this is like basically an index of abundance and diversity for butterflies. It's down 36% since 1990. And other instances to show that we're not playing here in America. Ohio butterflies declined 33% over 20 years. And in the West, 1.6% annually for 40 years. So we're certainly in an insect apocalypse right now. But how are we doing here? We are blessed. That's how I started this talk, to be blessed to be in such a community with so many people that are supportive, but also we have many people in our history to thank for making sure that we had such a place. So that's okay. In Humboldt County, we have nearly 100 different species of butterflies. And that's thanks to the amazing work of the past. So Horse Mountain, this is our gym. If you want to see 35 or 40 different kinds of butterflies in one day, you can do it there. You can come out to our field trips and likely see at least 30 on a good day. Lax Creek, anybody been out to Lax Creek? Nice, a good amount of people. Oh yeah, watch out for the ticks. You definitely want to tuck those pants and socks. But this has a bunch of amazing butterflies out there. We were out looking for butterflies 2 years ago and found a very uncommon butterfly, the great Arctic. Very, very uncommon. It only comes out every other year. So that was 2 years ago that we found it. This year, we'll be able to find it again. And Bald Hills Road, also a really amazing spot. Last year when we were out, we were able to see a butterfly that hadn't been seen since 2014, and it only occurs here. This amazing orange tip. And then right after we saw it, another super rare butterfly appeared. It was just like magic, the great purple hair streak. So incredible day, one of my favorite memories. But we don't have to go all the way out in the sticks. We have lots of great butterflies here around town. The Marsh, amazing place to see butterflies. In fact, I don't know, I can't remember who it was. Someone on INAT reported a checkered white. And that's not a very common butterfly, but they saw it here in the Marsh. So all those cabbage whites, I know the gardeners really hate them. They're eating your broccoli and their kale. But if you keep an eye out amongst those cabbage whites, you might see some rare other white butterflies located right here. Also, you're going to get woodland skippers and Ackman blues, Melita crescents, field crescents, red admirals, all kinds of great things right here, walkable from your door. Well, I want to talk about 3 butterflies next. So the purplish copper. This butterfly likes wetland plants like knotweeds and other sort of related plants. We've done a pretty good job of taking care of our wetlands here. So purplish copper is still fairly common in our area. But this isn't the case in the Bay Area, where they've had a lot more impacts to their wetlands. What used to be considered almost a weedy butterfly is now considered rare in the Bay Area. Similar story for the field crescent. One of the biggest populations in the world of field crescent was north of Davis, a unique, sort of subpopulation of field crescents, now completely gone. Here, you can see field crescents readily. You can go out to Elk River Spit or here at the Marsh or Mad River Slough and see them in abundance because we have a bunch of big stands of the California aster, which is what their caterpillars eat. And then the redwood white. This is an endemic subspecies of the margined white, and it only occurs on the edges of the redwood forests. Its caterpillars eat the Cardamine angulata, a rare plant found only here. So this is our neighbor butterfly. This is our mascot, and I'll talk a little bit about this butterfly more coming up, but really want you to remember the redwood white. So I want to sort of tell the story of 3 different imperiled butterflies. First up, the monarch. This butterfly has done so much work for butterfly conservation. It's got a lot of people interested. It's super charismatic. It's big. It's orange. It's got an amazing life history. On the West Coast, in 2020, the total number of these counted in their roosting area was just under 2,000 individuals. To put that in perspective, in the mid-'80s, that number was 10 million. So imagine something of like the population of the Greater Bay Area going down to like the population of Blue Lake. And that's what's happened with monarchs on the West Coast. This butterfly absolutely needs conservation. It absolutely needs help. What's sort of interesting about this one is that there's a lot of interest locally from people that want to do good things for butterflies. And they know about the monarch. And so they think, I know monarch, I know milkweed, I'm going to plant milkweed and do good things for the butterflies. We have all that enthusiasm here, but what we don't have is the geography for it. So we live right here on the coast where the fog is coming in. Who calls it Fogust? It's a really cool, foggy time of year. And that's the time whenever monarch caterpillars are needing to pupate. So if there's milkweeds out in this community, the monarch will definitely lay her eggs on that, but that plant might not get warm enough for the caterpillar to make it all the way to pupation. So if you want to plant milkweeds, the rule of thumb is there already milkweeds growing there? And am I outside the fog belt? Those are the 2 things. So if you got property in Willow Creek, make the milkweeds happen, But if you're out at Samoa, there's a lot of other butterflies that you can do good things for. So the monarch, it's got a wide range. We have this West Coast population, the Midwest population. I mean, that's sort of the one that gets the most attention too, because they overwinter in Mexico in the trees and it looks amazing. And that population is a lot bigger. But Another butterfly with a similarly large, not quite as large as monarch, is Powesheik skipperling. And this one's got my heart because this is the first butterfly I studied. This butterfly is an obligate to the tall grass prairies of the Midwest. Its historical distribution was all the way from Manitoba to Michigan. So all the Great Plains, they were inhabited by Powesheik skipperling. Its caterpillars eat just the prairie grasses that were in such abundance that there could just be Powesheik skipperlings everywhere. By the time I started to study this butterfly in 2013, there were less than 200 worldwide. 4 populations, and many of them with only single-digit counts at the year. My advisor, whenever I was working on this, he told me a story whenever he was a young entomologist. He was studying for another, what he thought was going to be a rare butterfly called the Dorcas copper. So he's out there counting Dorcas coppers, and he's counting all the other butterflies too because he's interested, you know. But he said that he wouldn't even write down the Powesheik because they were as common as robins. Totally unremarkable to see. He couldn't have done anything else if he was just counting Powesheiks. So to go from a butterfly that the landscape is just lousy with to one that needs millions and millions and millions to recover it in just the amount of time that my advisor, his time to my time, was the amount of time it took for that butterfly to get to near extinction levels. Let's bring it home a little bit. So the Powesheik and the monarch, they got wide-ranging ranges. The barren silver spot, this one, extremely narrow range. The southern half of Mendocino County, within a mile of the coast. The very tip of Sonoma County. But just that strip of coastal prairie, that's the only place in the world that this butterfly exists. In 2020, California State Parks, Bureau of Land Management, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service were out trying to do surveys for this butterfly and counted 0. Could not find this butterfly. One person was out that was part of the recovery team that said, I went out one day and I saw one. I saw one. And it was just that amount of seeing one that was enough to hang our hope on. So the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service worked with Sequoia Park Zoo to go down the next year, and they found a population of about 40 or 50 hanging on in one little spot. They collected 7 females and brought them to our zoo here, Sequoia Park Zoo, where they laid eggs, hatched into larvae, eventually pupated, and were released back out into the field so that there were 80 butterflies released from those 7 that were collected before. Those 80 represent more than had ever been counted on surveys for all the years cumulatively. So we were able to bring back this butterfly to the landscape, and year after year, 250 more, and thousands of caterpillars back onto the landscape since. But it shouldn't take these stories to keep us from doing what can be good things for butterflies. But one good place to start is looking at our current rare ones. Let's not let our butterflies exhibit the same fates as monarch, Powesheik, and barren silver spot. But what is it like to study some of these rare ones? And I want to talk about one in particular, this seaside hoary elfin. This is a spring flying butterfly. It's going to be out in like 2 weeks. There's only 3 known populations in the world, and the largest of those is in Delaware County. The caterpillars for this eat kinnick, bearberry, Arctostaphylos uva ursi. People who know that plant, can I get a little? Yeah, I see a few people. Nice. So this is a low-growing plant. It has pink flowers, red berries. Once you've been pointed out the plant, you'll be like, oh, that's everywhere. I see it all the time. So the caterpillars eat that plant, but the monitoring data indicates a decline, and we're not really sure why. Is it because the shore pines are growing up on the sides, shading the habitat such that it just doesn't get warm enough for this butterfly to do all of its things, similar to like what might be happening with monarch? Is it that there's not enough new growth on that kinnick? Because if you've ever touched the leaves of kinnick, they're super thick and waxy, just like I can't imagine taking a bite out of one, and a tiny little caterpillar, it also would have an incredibly difficult time. So its caterpillars eat the new growth, that tender new green growth and the inflorescences. So it's not just having the plant that's there, but having a plant that's thriving enough to put off that new growth. But these are just ideas. It could be pathogens, it could be predators, it could be something that we don't even know anything about. How do we answer this question? Because we have to get in there, collect data. The data needs to be robust, but we can't mess with the butterfly too much because it's already so precarious. Because declining species, they're at an imminent extinction risk. This one included. It's not listed on any endangered species list, but it's still extremely rare. And that rare butterflies often occur in sensitive and rare habitats. It's like it makes sense that something very uncommon would be found in an uncommon kind of place. But getting out there and studying it, just our presence impacts their behavior, the way that they fly around, the way that they pick mates, the way they decide which plants to nectar upon. What we're seeing is a human influence behavior. So these studies, they need careful planning and permitting so that the impacts are as minimized as much as possible. But even with all of that planning, everything that we could think to throw at this to be able to study it and keep the impacts low is still held under this weird umbrella in that we're studying a declining species. We may be learning only what this declining species is able to make do with, and not what a thriving population needs. Whenever we have no thriving populations to study, how do we know what a thriving population needs? Well, to the rescue, Cal Poly Humboldt students came to answer some of these questions. And to do that, we looked at the brown elfin butterfly. This has a very similar life history to the seaside hoary elfin. It's got a similar flight period, is in the same genus, it eats the same food plant. It's much more widespread, though, and much more abundant, and critically, it's close by. So all these factors let us study the brown elfin as a surrogate species, one that can help inform questions for seaside hoary elfin. If we have a butterfly doing all the other butterfly stuff the seaside hoary elfin is doing, maybe we can look at that and answer some questions.
Is it also declining?
This butterfly is not in decline. This butterfly is found across the country. It's doing, in terms of butterflies, it's doing great. As for whether or not it could be starting to experience declines, I don't want to speak too soon because the story of the Powasheik was just that. It was like, ask someone 30 years ago, how's Powasheik doing? No one would ever have worried about it. That's how I feel about brown elfin right now, but that doesn't mean that will all be my story next year or the year after. No one is keeping tabs on this butterfly. It's one that's readily available, but we'll get to what you can do to help on that front coming up. So I got to shout out the students at Cal Poly Humboldt, AJ Murphy, Vernie Sanchez, Maggie Villasenor, and Leila Rahimini for studying the new growth development, the inflorescence development of Kinnick here at Millel Dunes, where we have brown elfin butterflies in abundance. Also, Harper Lacey, Sienna Tubridy, and Elizabeth McGuire studied the Kinnick abundance and related that to butterfly presence. So basically, they're answering two questions. First, the first group of students was like, how much new growth does there need to be to support brown elfins? And the second one was, how much overall Kinnick does there need to be across the landscape to support these brown elfins? And together, those questions help us answer questions for seaside hoary elfin. And that community partnership helped us be stronger as butterfly conservationists. Which really got me thinking, there's a lot the community can do for butterflies. How can we help our neighbors? So here's this idea, this community-centered butterfly conservation, and it stands on 4 legs. First up, that's community engagement, getting out and talking to the community. Because of the next one, there's a lot of public interest, really nice crowd tonight. Thanks so much, everybody, for coming out. But a lot of people like butterflies and they want to do good things. And so there's a lot of public interest to be, interacted with. Plus, like I started my talk with, most butterflies aren't migratory. They're our neighbors all year long. So you can be doing good things for the adults and the caterpillars and the pupae, to make sure that your neighbor butterflies are doing good. And you can have a massive scale of impact. These are tiny little critters, but your backyard is ginormous in butterfly terms. So with these 4 legs, we can build community amongst our neighbors, butterfly, human, and otherwise, to help keep the common things common and blur that line between human communities and natural communities. And that also helps us fulfill humanity's ecological role on the landscape. So community engagement, that's getting out, knowing and relating to the community, talking to people, talking to neighbors, getting people's interests, ideas, knowing where they are, and then building partnerships. There's people out there, that are crazy about growing native plants. I'm sure there's a lot of native plant people in here tonight. So the interface of the native plant community with the butterfly conservation community, it just goes hand in hand because together we can be a lot stronger. Being a community asset. Send me your butterfly pictures. I want to tell you what they are or help you figure out how to do that on your own. And giving people stepping stones of engagement. Many people are interested in doing something, but they may not have the right tools or know where to start. By giving them a step 1 and a step 2 and a step 3 and 4 and 5 and 67, whatever, all the way out so that they can just follow that path if they want, or once they feel comfortable, start off on their own path. Also, providing equitable access and ensuring people feel safe and welcome. This is critical because butterflies are for everybody. Everybody deserves to see butterflies. Everybody deserves to be able to do something and can do something to help butterflies. Like I said, there's a lot of public interest. People love butterflies and they want to help them. So some good ways to do that are community events. Thanks so much for coming out to this community event. Doing Pollinator Week, being out at the farmer's market to, engage with people about I can't tell you how many times I've said, you want a butterfly sticker to someone at the farmer's market and definitely not been turned away. And that's a great community gathering place too. Giving scientific and educational talks. What do you think I'm doing right now? I'm out here trying to do this. And volunteer events. We have one coming up. I got details coming if you're interested in volunteering. So, like I said before, most butterflies aren't migratory, and they have small geographic distributions with limited dispersal capability. So, the habitat needs to be brought to them. Where they already are, it needs to be expanded. Because not only are you going to be doing good things for the butterfly, but that's creating this multi-species benefit for the birds to get the caterpillars to feed their chicks and for the spiders to be able to do their own thing too. Every part of the food web is important. And by doing good things for butterflies, you're doing good things for so many other tiny critters in your backyard. Because like I've been saying, these are our neighbors. These are our butterfly neighbors all year long. And we have a community that really values being neighborly. And so trying to translate that to how we can help butterflies, but also how we can come together and build even more and stronger community amongst ourselves. Because we can have a really highly focused efforts in our backyard. You are the ruler of your backyard and you can say what plants go in there. So you can make a big difference there and neighbors can collaborate. Let's say you're buddy with your neighbor, also a butterfly fan. You got a bunch of California aster. You got some field crescents coming to check it out. Well, if they want to, just across the property line, plant a bunch of California aster on their property, then you're definitely going to get those field crescents to take up shop, be there year after year after year.
Could you tell us what that's from?
This is some type of carrot family. Can the native plant people help me out? Is it Horse Mountain?
Could be Yampa.
Yampa. No. No, well, no. I'm getting. I can't tell you. Sorry, I can't tell you what. It definitely does. I can tell you exactly where it is. It's at the top of Friday Ridge Road, and you can see it in early July. But these are juniper hair streaks. That's what this picture is collaboration. Is everybody coming together doing the same thing, but it's just butterflies instead of people in this one. So let's put it together a little bit here. So talking about brown elfins. We have a bunch of brown elfins out at the dunes. This is data from iNaturalist. Look at all those brown elfin occurrences along the dunes. And then we have this one up on Fickle Hill Road. While updating this presentation for this week, I saw a new observation. It was put up on iNaturalist, and it's somewhere along the bottoms. Is there Arctostaphylos uva ursi, the kinnick, the bearberry right there? Or is it a GPS error? I don't know yet. I got to go check it out. But what we can do is come together as community, get out and plant more kinnick, and see if we can't get these brown elfins to move into town. Like, I think that would be such a remarkable conservation story of getting the butterflies to come back into town. Because almost certainly these were connected historically in the past. How long ago? I'm not sure. But if you go around Arcata, Eureka, McKinleyville, you're going to see kinnick everywhere. It's a super popular ground cover because it's hardy and easy to grow and it has medicinal uses. So, it's a beneficial plant to plant. One thing I would note, though, is that there is a native version and then a cultivar version. The cultivar, I definitely see it around for sale. My guess is that brown elfins would eat it, but I don't know for sure. So if you're thinking about trying to buy one, try to go for the native version because I know the brown elfins eat that one. No, brown elfins will eat many different plants, and pretty much any manzanita they'll chomp on, and I think in some cases they'll even eat some, vaccinium species too. They're quite generalists. So that's what leads me to think that they probably would eat the cultivar of kinnick, but I'm not sure. So I'm only advocating for the native variety. You got another question?
No, I just want in this they're using the kinnick.
Absolutely. Whenever we see them out at the dunes, they're all over the kinnick. That's very obvious what their food plant is. So what are some community actions that we can take? How do we blur the lines between human communities and natural communities? First up, make space. That's planting food for the caterpillars. Lots of people want to do pollinator gardens, but they're only focused on the adults out there. Well, if you want the adults, the caterpillars have to have existed before. So planting the food for the caterpillars is the best way to ensure that you're going to have more butterflies in your area. And if you're trying to decide what plant to plant, might I suggest kinnick as being one that you consider. Another good thing to do, let your yard get long. And I love this one because you don't got to do anything. You can just take a nap and this happens. So if you have a portion of your yard or maybe your whole yard that you can just let grow up messy, they like the messy abundance. Sometimes people are like, oh, I like my native plants in their place and it looks like a garden, and that is totally okay. But if you want to do good things for butterflies, you gotta let it get messy, which is kind of a Humboldt thing anyway. We get messy around here. So just let your yard get long. You can do this while you sleep. And I was talking about butterflies and moths being the same thing, so I definitely got to shout out moths. Like, they do lots of night pollination, and certainly we see declines in butterfly species. It's almost certain that's happening with moths too. We're just not collecting the data for it. So doing good things for your moths, one of the good things would be to adjust your lights at night. So this could be putting your lights on a timer or a motion switch or just turning them off, or using the sort of like the yellow tinted bulbs that are less impactful for wildlife. But those lights really impact the moth's ability to navigate. The reason that they get so confused is because they would use the moon as a relatively stationary object in the sky and be like, all right, that's up. So I know that's staying in the same spot. So as I fly around, I know I have one bright reference point and it's not moving. Well, once I get close to some artificial light, it moves quite a lot because they're moving quite a lot. Moths are quite erratic. Yes, question. I don't know about on butterflies, but certainly on moths. So that light.
The lights are bad.
The lights are bad for moths. But I say adjust your lights. I don't say get rid of your lights because there may be very good reason for your lights, be it safety reasons or being able to walk around. I don't want people to be like, I can never turn my lights on. That's not the case. You got to take care of yourself too. But if you put it on a timer or a motion switch or something so that it's only on when you need it, that's really going to help the moths because otherwise they don't know which way's up, literally. You can get active. So I told you I got that data for brown elfin from iNaturalist. Get iNaturalist on your phone, snap the pics of the butterflies. We got to know what's out there. We're in the insect apocalypse right now. We're in the decline right now. We need to know what the butterflies that we have around are so that we can prevent the next pow-sheep skipperling or barren silver spot situation. You can document your findings at NABA.org. That's North American Butterfly Association.org under the butterflies we've seen section. That's a lot more data intensive. But if you're putting your data on iNaturalist, if you observe kinnick, which will be helpful to map, if we know where all the kinnick is, we might know where to expect to see brown elfins, or maybe we even try to bring them here. Or you can just add your observations to the NABA Redwood project. Definitely, if you come out on any of our field trips, then that would be awesome if you could add those data to the project. You can advocate. So at your board of supervisor meetings or city council, or any times where they're soliciting public input for a new development project or some new thing that the city or county is doing, you can say, hey, we need native plants out there. And not just native plants, but we need native habitat out there too. So the way these plants are with the mulch between them, that's better than nothing, but it'd be better if this was some sort of mosaic of habitat for the insects to move in and out, because it's often the edge of one thing to another that's important for a lot of critters. Is it, a fox that's waiting to ambush on the edge of the bushes, or is it, a hawk that's perched on a spot that it can see a whole field? It's those edges that are really important. So having a mosaic for those insects to move around in so that they can find shelter, they can find food, that's what we need. So advocate not just for native plants, but for native habitats. You can volunteer. So coming up, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is having the Scotch Broom Bash on March 14th. They provide a ride from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service office behind Tony's up to Delaware County, north of Crescent City, to habitat that's historically had Oregon silver spot, as well as seaside hoary elfin. And they'll remove this nasty invasive Scotch broom. So if you're interested in that, please email Kylie Suttle at fws.gov and say, hey, I'm interested. What do I need to do to join this? Yes.
So this is quite like Humboldt. We have so many volunteer events, and anyone is welcome. We work with the Humboldt Trail Stewards, Trinidad Land Trust, McKinneyville Land Trust. We work with everyone and do all types of invasive removals and trash pickups and anything you can think of. Yeah.
Cool.
And it's every weekend. You can ask me about it if you want the contact, but it's every single weekend. Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks. Talking about clubs, you should join our club. Anyone can join. You don't have to be a student to join the North American Butterfly Association. We're the Redwood chapter. We're one of the newest chapters. We've been around since 2023. And we get out and we do butterfly counts all over the county. We do free field trips. We provide binoculars, field guides, nets when appropriate, so that we can get out there and get close to these organisms and see them up close and just appreciate, the beauty, because you can see a butterfly flying in the distance and that's beautiful. But to get up and to see the intricate pattern of the scales and the amazing mosaic from which they're made, it's just mind-blowing and gets people really excited. We're trying to see all 98 species in the county. I think we're about 54 right now. So come out, help us get that number up. You can follow us at naba.redwood on Instagram. Send us an email, nabaredwood@gmail.com, to get on our email list. I have an email list sign up here later, and I also have some more information. So definitely, we're interested in getting people out there and getting people excited to do good things for butterflies and just to learn more about them. But also, you can be creative. So art is science. And I love this story so much. This woman, Maria Sibylla Marian, in the late 1600s, she was the daughter of a German illustrator and printmaker. And she would raise silkworm moth caterpillars. And she loved them so much. She would spend as much time with them, and she started to draw them. She would feed them the mulberry leaves that they would eat and watch them take their little tiny bites out of the leaf. And then she would start to draw that. And even the unique little nibble marks on the leaf would be replicated in her art. She truly loved these organisms, and she cared for them all the way to the pupa stage and to the adult stage, and then she watched those adults mate and lay eggs, and those eggs turned into caterpillars. And this was still the time where vermin, which includes anything sort of like buggy, they thought that it generated from spontaneous generation. They thought flies came from rotten meat. Well, through her art, through her dedication, she was able to help dispel the idea of spontaneous generation. One of the greatest entomologists of all time, and she did it with her art. Showcasing locals, and I mean this two kinds of ways. First up, the redwood white that I mentioned earlier. We're showcasing that native butterfly in this artwork, and a local person did it. Unfortunately, he's moved away, but his name's Riley Gorman. He was my neighbor. I was walking my dog around my neighborhood, and he was just had his garage open, working on some art, and it's like an open studio. So I go up and I talk to him, and I start looking at his art, and it was just like really drippy, kind of like psychedelic, super bold colors. And I start to look, and that's a great blue heron, and that's a brant, and that's an American dipper, and they're real critters with his own unique style. And I absolutely loved it because he was showcasing native biodiversity through his own lenses, his own expression. So if you're going to do butterfly art, I would recommend getting inspired by your local native butterflies. There's 98 in the county to choose from, and there's so many beautiful ones amongst those. And outreach. I got to shout out my friend Natalie Fairs, who did these stickers. They got the Annis swallowtail adult, the caterpillar, and the life cycle. And we use these for outreach for the chapter to get people, thinking about, that the butterflies they love, they spent a bunch of time as a caterpillar, and they spent some time as a pupa and as an egg, so that they can really get an appreciation for this neighbor that's there all year long. So I've talked a lot about the things that we can do and that we should do and that are good to do. And that's really the things that I want to hit home the most. But I do think it's important to note some things that we should avoid. One, planting resources outside their native range. So if you go to the co-op right now, I'm sure you can go buy a pack of wildflower mix. Wild to where? It's like, we want to be planting wild native plants that are native to here. So you can get those plants at CMPS, Native Plant Sales, the Freshwater Farms Nursery. Many of the plant resources around have a native plant section. Humboldt Botanical Garden has a yearly plant sale. These are great places to get native plants that are from here. I'm sorry? Monty at Redwood Acres also. Excellent. And then we talked earlier about avoiding milkweeds in the fog belt, but there's also, especially in Southern California, so if you have family in Southern California that's wanting to plant for butterflies, encourage them to avoid this one in particular, is Asclepias curasavica, which is, it doesn't die back in the winter. So it stays green all winter long, which seems like it would be a good thing, nice, leafy, things for the caterpillars to eat all the time. But since it doesn't die back, it actually allows a parasite, a protist parasite, to grow on it, which infects the butterflies and gives them these kind of drippy, unformed wings. So the Asclepias curasavica is one to certainly avoid. People really don't grow it up here, but there's a lot of people that have connections to Southern California, so I like to make sure to make that point. So one other thing I feel like that we should avoid are these mail order butterfly kits. And this one kind of hurts to say because there are so many core memories out there of kids watching caterpillars eat and eat and eat, pupate, and then eclose into an adult. And that metamorphosis is absolutely one of the most magical things on the planet, and I would not want to rob anybody from that experience. These mail order butterfly kits are maybe not the way to do it, though, because they're currently unregulated. They may be spreading pathogens, parasites, mudding the genetics of these butterflies. So what I would suggest instead is get out. You could probably do it just around here, wherever you see a bunch of fennel. I know it's a non-native plant, but the Annis swallowtails love it. Look around on that fennel. Look for things that look like little pieces of bird poop. Those are anise swallowtail caterpillars. So you can take those in, take a bunch of fennel with you, feed them that fennel. If you run out of fennel, you can go buy organic parsley from the co-op and feed them that. And then they'll pupate and then emerge as amazing anise swallowtails, which frankly are way more beautiful than the painted ladies. I'm going to say it. They're extremely, extremely pretty. And you won't have any bad feelings about letting those ones go. If you do the mail order butterfly kits, there are issues with letting them go. So if you are set on doing the mail order butterfly kits, I would recommend that at least you just care for those butterflies through the end of their life and not to let them go into the population, because that would be bad for butterflies overall. All right, now we're going to hit some resources, things that are going to be useful to you if you got interested in butterflies because of tonight or an existing interest already. First up, this Lives of Butterflies. If you ever saw zoo books, this is the zoo books of today. I love these. So the Lives of Butterflies is part of a series. They do the lives of snakes and sharks and octopuses and lichens and viruses and moths. So Lepidoptera gets represented twice in the series. But it's amazing. It speaks definitely to the enthusiast, but not in an overly complicated way. Gives you lots of cool, interesting biology, life history, and then tells you about lots of cool butterflies all around the world while telling you all about their behavior and their biology. If you're wanting to get into butterfly ID, a free way to do it is getting iNaturalist on your phone, getting a picture, and using that to ID. But sometimes it's just not good enough. And that's where a good field guide cannot be beat. And this is the one to get. Don't bother with any other guide for this area. This is the one to get. It's organized by family. It's got amazing photos. It's by Robert Michael Pyle and Caitlin LeBar. Robert Michael Pyle, he's the guy that started the Xerxes Society. So that's a nonprofit that focuses on invertebrate conservation. He is the dude, all right? And he's a great writer. He has a bunch of other amazing books, one on foot that I also really encourage everyone to read. It's a really, really awesome read. But if you just had money for one of these resources and you want to get the most bang for your buck, you can't do better than this one. It's not a field guide. It's kind of big, but it is the most amazing resource. So what these two guys, David James and David Nunnally, they went all throughout Cascadia and collected butterflies, brought them in, let them lay eggs, got a picture of that egg, cared for the caterpillar as it progressed. Each of the instars of development, so each of those 6 instars, the pupa and the adult. So there's pictures in there. This is information you literally can't get on the internet. It's in this book. What they fed them, where they got them from, the temperatures that they kept them at. If you're interested in rearing local butterflies that are a little bit more difficult, that would be the place to start. And, I definitely recommend looking at the anise swallowtail page. Just amazing to see this caterpillar that looks like bird poop go to something that's amazingly, green and striped and yellow and orange. Just amazing, amazing transformations, even just within the caterpillar stage. But let's say you want to plant flowers for butterflies. You're like, I like my flowers and I want them to also be good for butterflies. Pollinator.org/guides. This is going to be good for all kinds of pollinators. What you can do is in this corner, you can put in your zip code and it'll give you a specific region or a region-specific planting guide. This is almost certainly the one that you want. I put in Arcata as a test and it gave me one that was much more well-suited for Trinity County. So make sure that this is the one that you get in the mixed forest, redwood forest province. And that'll tell you not only good things for butterflies, but for other pollinators like bees and flies and beetles. And this is what I feel like I've been hitting home all night is we need to be planting for caterpillars too. And there's a great resource for that. Calscape.org/California butterflies and moths. It's amazing. You can go in and type in, I'm searching for brown elfin or whatever butterfly you're interested in, and give it, your zip code. And it'll give you a list of known and suspected host plants for that butterfly in your area. So if you're like, I saw a Satyr flying around my backyard, but I don't know what it eats. Well, you can go in here and look it up and be like, oh, I got to plant a bunch of stinging nettle in my backyard because that's what its caterpillars eat. So good luck with that one. Also, a great resource we have available today is a butterfly checklist of butterflies of Humboldt County. This has every butterfly in the county, where to find them, when to find them, what its caterpillars eat, and how common they are. So it's only got this picture in it, but it's an amazing resource, and we have it for very, very, very affordable suggested donation. So I would say if you want some information and you're on a budget, this hopefully helps you get a lot of information. Right. All right, let's talk about this recipe. How do we turn our community into a butterfly town? First up, identify. Figure out who your neighbors are. Get out there, see what the butterfly is, and figure out what is it. Once you figured out what it is, do some research. Figure out what its caterpillars eat, what its caterpillars eat around here. Is there a mix? Is there some sort of advantage that I could plant this plant for the 2 butterflies that I see? But delving a little bit more into what that butterfly needs, especially in the caterpillar form, and then plant that plant. It's just that easy. Identify, research, plant. If we get people doing that, we're going to turn our community into a butterfly town. So that's Arcata, butterfly town. Eureka, butterfly town. Ferndale, Fortuna, Willow Creek, Klamath, all over butterfly towns.
I love it.
So in summary, we can all make an impact, but our biggest impact is going to be when we work together as neighbors. We can help our neighbors and we can protect our neighbors by protecting and enhancing our existing treasures. We're blessed to live here. Let's make sure that the people that come after us feel that same way. And one way that we can do that to keep butterflies on the landscape is to implement the recipe of planting flowers and caterpillar food. So thank you, and thank all these people too for coming out tonight. Appreciate y'all. Elliot.
It just happens we have some checkered bloom ground cover for sale at the back of the bridge. Who eats them?
The West Coast lady. And that's a very good one. That's one that we have around in the community a lot. We can see it oftentimes in winter. I've seen them in December, January, February on nice warm days. But what's great about it too is that this butterfly is actually starting to be considered one of conservation concern. So it's one that we could actually turn the tide for right now with exactly the plant that you have.
Well, it's brought in the checkered bloom. You're pointing to each other. Whoever's to blame, thank you.
Lori.
The CMPS website also has a list of butterfly and plants that are food plants for the.
Excellent. I used to have copies of that, but I think I gave all the ones I printed away. Excellent.
Sale, the money all goes from. So I would set a bottom line of a certain amount for like the 2 orange pots, $2 or something, and then a price for the 5 gallon, a price for the 2 gallon. But all of that, I assume you guys would take checks.
Sure.
Cash, yeah.
Yeah.
We all go to phone.
Thank you.
Well.
Is the zoo still working on raising the caterpillars and letting them back into the wild?
For now, yes. And so if you want to see them at the zoo, go to the barnyard area and there's a glass encased area where they work. So from basically, April to June, you'll be able to go see some of the rarest caterpillars on the planet. But that program is in dire need of funding right now. So if you know anyone with extra deep pockets, that program absolutely needs some substantial help to make sure that we keep that momentum. It's the Butterfly Conservation Program at Sequoia Park Zoo, specifically for the Barron's silver spot, which is one of the ones that I had mentioned tonight. It's at the zoo. Yes, if you're interested, please come talk to me. In my day job, I work with it, but I'm not representing my day job right now. Well, if you know someone that does. Oh, yes, here.
If you plant a native plant that's not local, right here local, but maybe 100, 200 miles stage or something, and there's overlap with the butterflies that will use it, the caterpillars that can eat it, is there harm in planting it, you know what I mean? It will still be used by generalist butterfly.
My inclination is it probably isn't an issue. And the reason that I say that is, fennel is an invasive plant, but it hasn't been bad for the anise swallowtails. And people, come from the Central Valley where they're planting for pipevine swallowtails. Now there's a bunch of pipevine around here. Well, I was out on a butterfly trip last year. I saw a big black butterfly fly by, almost certainly a pipevine swallowtail. So in that case, we may be encouraging their range expansion. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. And we just don't have enough data to say.
Yeah, because I want to run right out and take some pictures and submit them to INAT. How does INAT do with the caterpillars? Like you were talking about the anise swallowtail that kind of looked like a little bit of poop. Can INAT pick that up?
Many, yes, but not all. So, like I said, this book that has the pictures of each caterpillar stage, most of those pictures are not available anywhere on the internet. And so they've not been given to INAT for its training data either. But what would be amazing is that if we had a bunch of people getting out looking for caterpillars using the book, uploading it to INAT, other people confirming it, then it will get better at that. So the more caterpillars you can put in there, the better. For example, this year we were out at Lax Creek for the Butterfly Club, and we saw some caterpillars, and I got some pictures of them. I used the book, and I'm like, it looks a lot like orange tip caterpillar, but it's not Sarah orange tip. And then I was able to use INAT to be like, I got close enough, and it helped me get to gray marble. Gray marble is not a butterfly featured in that book, so I had no pictures of that one. Yeah, but I couldn't find any pictures of gray marble caterpillars online at the time either, so it helped me get there though. Yeah.
I just want to say for INAT, you do not have to know what you're taking a picture of.
Correct.
If you just submit it and say it's a butterfly, someone may come along and identify what it's from.
And the best way to do it is give a wrong identification,
Yeah.
and then someone will correct you immediately. Yeah. All right. Thank you all so much for coming tonight. If you're interested in learning more about our club, do you have another question?
Oh,
Well, if you're interested and you want to come out, there's lots of this enthusiasm at all of our butterfly field trips. I have an email list sign up that you can learn more about. We're at naba.redwood on Instagram. I also have stickers and checklists up here for suggested donation. We use that just to buy more binoculars, field guides, and nets for our trips. It goes all directly back into field trip enjoyment, because that, I think, is what really makes the difference in butterflies. Yeah.
Thank you very much.